Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we are joined by Katie Richardson. She has a wonderful story to tell us. I'm really excited to hear her perspective as we kind of jump into some of the success that she's had, both on the product side as well as on the coaching and development side, and excited to hear her story. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to you, Katie, to kind of give a brief introduction and tell us who Katie Richardson from Portland is.
Yeah, Katie Richardson is a high performance coach. I'm also a product designer, a welder, a carpenter, a mother of four, a woman of God, a designer, creator, cook. I like to do a lot of things, Liam. I am known for, first and foremost, building and creating an incredible physical products company called Pudge. And we design and manufacture children's products that get distributed all over the world. And they've been featured on The Ellen Show, The Rachel Ray Show, The Today Show. My husband and I have been on the cover of Entrepreneur Magazine. It was kind of the thing that helped me create a name for myself in this world and was something that was kind of an unexpected journey, honestly. I did really well in school. I got a scholarship from General Motors. I received national awards for my furniture design. And really, I'd always planned on going to college. And so, didn't think I was going to achieve some of those things. So it was kind of like a fun surprise for me because I wasn't your typical book smarts individual. I'm a really creative individual and I like exploring and coming up with new ideas and problem solving. And so I was kind of surprised when I did really well in college because I found something that I was really passionate about and it didn't just require me to perform well on a test. And I ended up loving product design. And I kind of got to this point where I met an incredible man, got married. He was also in the product design major as well. And we got married and I was like, okay, I got my degree, I got married, and now I'm going to become a mom like I had just always imagined. And I had never imagined myself being a professional. And so I started having kids and it felt like this piece of me that I had developed in college and kind of these talents and skills that I had recognized in myself were starting to dwindle. And I wasn't okay with that. And I was in a children's boutique one day and the store owner pretty much attacked me, and it was a baby boutique, and she attacked me and was pointing out the baby hat that my son was wearing and the shoes and the blanket and the baby carrier, and I'd made all of it. And she said, "Where'd you get all of this stuff? It's totally hot." And I was kind of taken aback because we were living on very little income. I think my husband was maybe making $35,000 a year at his design job. I wasn't working. And so I was really good at cooking with rice and beans and just like living a very small, minimal life, which was fine. But she kind of opened my eyes and, I was pushing back on her. She said, "I want you to make this stuff for me." I was like, "I don't have a business. I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "Look, can't you see I have kids?" I had two kids with me at the time. I have four now. And she looked me straight in the eyes. And this was a moment that kind of changed my life, Liam. She said, "Look, I understand that you're really busy right now, but someday these kids are going to be in school full time and you will wish that you had done something with these gifts and these talents." And that really stung because I was kind of feeling it internally, but nobody had pointed it out to me. And I was like, man, ouch. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with just like putting my gifts and my talents and my skills and abilities on the full-time back burner and just not developing them. And so that then became the reason why I pursued entrepreneurship and developing a business. Is I wanted to grow as an individual, and I craved it. I wanted it, and I didn't want to be stagnant in my life. And I recognized that entrepreneurship could be a really incredible vehicle for doing that. So that is kind of how I jumped into entrepreneurship. And it wasn't easy. I didn't have a business degree, and for 2 years I was developing a product that I couldn't show anybody because I wanted to get a patent on it. So for 2 years, it was, still like $35,000 a year on my husband's job because I was kind of like wanting his attention too. He's a really smart guy. And so we worked on this together and we launched it and it just exploded. Within a year, we'd done over $1 million with one SKU, one physical product in one color. And it was like the whole brand was also the product, and it just exploded. And it became a way for us to tell our story establish our brand. And then as product designers, we continued to push out more products. So that's kind of the story about how Katie became an entrepreneur and created a business and honestly created value in this world. And in the process, created a vehicle where I could grow and develop as a person.
Hmm. How did you know that one product was going to be it? It sounds like when you're looking for a patent on a singular product, right? There's a lot invested in that.
There is.
How did you know that? Obviously, you had done hats and shoes and blankets, and
Mhm.
how did you know that this was the thing that the market would need and respond to?
Yeah, so there's different kinds of patents that you can get, and this product specifically is called the Pudge Tub. People need to go Google it because it's a product. When you see it, people drop their jaw and they're like, "This thing's brilliant." And it's now well known, but in the beginning, when people saw it, they were like, "It's so brilliant and so simple," that they wondered, where has this been? How come nobody's made this before? It basically takes your bathroom sink and turns it into a really soft, cushiony, fast, convenient, but safe and comforting baby bath. It's just incredible. It's this closed cell EVA foam that's warm, it's soft against your skin, and with a really brilliant design using magnets adhered to the foam, it folds into almost like origami. It folds into this bucket seat that fits into your bathroom sink. So, how did we know that this was going to be the knockout product? Um, I guess some of it was kind of instinct, honestly. Like it was so different and new, and it was intentional, Liam. Like I had created, like you said, hats and shoes and blankets and stuff like that. But oftentimes those things are very trend driven. And I knew I needed something that was functionally totally different and adding tremendous value by solving a major pain point for parents, which was bath time. So I knew it was a major pain point because I had 2 kids myself. And I knew that the existing products on the market were not actually solving the problem. Were babies getting clean? Yes. But was it comfortable for parents? Was it safe and secure for the baby? Was it creating mold and mildew? Like there were all these issues around it. Like babies were getting clean, but there were so many problems around baby bath time. So honestly, my husband and I over Christmas break, we said we're going to design a product that is going to allow you to quit your job, meaning my husband, you to quit your job and us to work together and to take our design abilities and really do something with it. And so we did. We just like drew and sketched and prototyped ideas for 2 weeks, and that was the one. I mean, I still have those pages, those sketches, silly ideas, so many silly ideas. But this concept of, we didn't know what it looked like, but we were like, what if there was a bathtub that hangs in stores flat and then folds to hold volume like a brown paper sack? That was kind of the inspiration. It's a product that you use it at every grocery store. And when you think about it, it's really quite brilliant. It's a piece of paper that has been folded geometrically into a shape that holds volume. And when you're done using it, you can just fold it and slide it into the side of your cupboard and it's invisible. And there were so many things about that I was like, I wish my bathtub did that. And we use that as a model to create this product. So to come back to your question, how did I know it was going to be something that was worth patenting? There's a lot of different things to think about. I mean, I think I could have an hour-long conversation with you. I mean, you have to do research and you have to do study. Like, is there anything out there that's similar? Because lots of people have gotten patents on things that aren't necessarily in mass production. So you have to do your research, your homework, go talk with attorneys and lawyers. But at the end of the day, you don't totally know. And there's another piece of the story I didn't share with you. I took it to a trade show a year prior, and there was a lot of interest in it. And I was talking to store buyers from Nordstrom, Target, Costco, like big names. And they were asking me all kinds of questions. And Liam, I was way out of my league. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about mass production. I mean, I knew a little bit, but couldn't totally hang with them. And they were asking me a lot of questions I just didn't have the answers to. And at the end of that show, keep in mind, I had invested tens of thousands of dollars just to get to that point, and was hoping that this was going to be some knockout product. I take it to the show and I came home with 0 orders. It was devastating. I didn't even have money to pay for a hotel there. I had to like call a friend of a friend and be like, can I sleep on your couch? And I was pregnant with my 3rd child. Like Everything was on the line, Liam. And I came home empty handed. And there was something that my husband told me when I got home from that show. And I was explaining to him how I failed. Nobody wants it. It's time to give up on our dreams because I just had reached my limit. And he was really, really wise. And he listened to me and he said, Katie, they didn't tell you no. I said, no, 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 they did. You're not hearing me. He said, no, they didn't tell you no. They asked you a bunch of questions and you just didn't have the answers to them. I was like, okay. And that equals no. And he said, all we have to do is answer those questions. Answer those questions and they will all buy. Answer those questions and we'll be shipping this thing all over the world. And when he said that, like my body just was on fire and I knew it was right. And while it was kind of embarrassing, right? Because you have to face friends and family. They all know that you're developing this thing. Did it work? No, but I'm not giving up. It wasn't easy to make that decision. It was really hard, but I did it very intentionally. And it was like, okay, we're $20,000 in debt and we're still living on rice and beans. And I've got 2 kids plus a third in my stomach. This might seem crazy, but I don't want to give up on my dream. And we're just going to keep going. And we did. And that's when a year later, they basically had handed us a blueprint for success. And so we answered all of those questions, took it to the trade show, and it exploded.
That's awesome. Yeah, it gave you market validation, really, from the key influencers, right? And what you've probably learned at this point is those people need it done for you, ready to buy, and you just weren't quite there yet at that stage, right? But
totally. And even before then, when you say market validation, like I just had it on my website and I had people from Australia, Holland, France, pretty much buying a plane ticket for this product because I didn't have a UPS account. They would have to spend $250 just to ship it. And people were buying it. So yeah, to add to that, it was being validated.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then, it's just how do you commercialize it? Right. So it's easy for them. I'm sure they were asking you how many SKUs per pallet, right? And all those stupid big box questions that you're like, I don't know, how many do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
You know how it works, right?
Yeah. And to kind of speak to that, we started with low production in the US. It was super expensive. It was very expensive. The turnaround time was way too long. And this was a factory that was 3 hours from my house. It would take them weeks just to respond to an email. They were slow. The quality was really bad. They would deliver it. And I would say 20% of it was not to my quality standard. And I wasn't okay sending it to a customer. And so much of it was wasted. And it was interesting because when we made the decision to go big and we took it to this trade show and we got all of these purchase orders, that's when we moved manufacturing overseas, dropped our price 60%, but increased our margins. And that's when it became a scalable game for us. But we were able to kind of prove the concept locally, expensively, but the actual cash out was less. And we proved the concept.
Yeah. So now the question that we like to ask everyone, right? So now you're hitting scale. You did $1 million in that first year. You're starting to have cash flow come in. You don't need rice and beans every day.
Right.
From an investment perspective, kind of what was your strategic mindset in terms of, where do you allocate this money? Sure, you pay off the debt first, makes sense, right? Then what? Kind of what was your thinking and kind of where did you apply it?
So this is where I wish I could tell you a really glamorous story, Liam. And I'm a woman who values the truth. And I feel like I made a lot of mistakes. I do. And I actually, if you're open to it, I would love to share kind of where my mistakes were. And so many of my mistakes stemmed from my mindset. I really, as I look back on that experience, we had that business for 8 years and sold it 4 years ago. Somebody made us an offer we weren't expecting, and it was an offer we couldn't refuse. And that's when I made the jump into coaching. But I had a very scarcity mindset. And I think a lot of it started, it's interesting because that resourcefulness helped me build a business from nothing, from zero, right? And eventually that became this badge of honor that I could do something from nothing. And I didn't pay myself enough for a really long time. And I poured every dollar back into the business. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes it was not good. It was, I think there were times when it was kind of destructive because because I wasn't paying myself enough. It had me constantly in this state of scarcity. So that experience of being wise with my money didn't come until later when I realized, oh, because here was the thing. I can start paying myself, come February, because in February, we have more products coming online and this thing's going to happen. And we're hiring this position and my sales are going to, then like once we hit 2 million, then I'll pay myself more. Once we hit 5 million, then I'll pay myself more. And then you get to that point, and I just kept moving the marker. It wasn't enough, right? Because I had scarcity thinking. It was really destructive. And it was honestly kind of even reinforced by the people I love around me. It was like, good for you that you're paying yourself so little. Good for you that you've been driving the same minivan for 15 years. Like, good for you. And I have since learned that that's really destructive. So what do we do now today? Let me actually give you an example. So I have 4 kids. My oldest is 17. And he turned 16 during COVID, and I shared my BMW with him. People thought I was crazy. Like, you're going to share your Beamer with your 16-year-old? And it was very intentional, Liam, because I didn't want to carry the scarcity anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be intentional about this. I live an abundant life, and I want to share in my abundance with my 16-year-old. And so I created a contract with him. And I said, look, everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I want to share my BMW with you. And if you're open to that, we need to create a contract. And we did. We created a contract, and there were rules that he had to live by if he wanted access to the Beamer. And one day he broke those rules and he lost access to the Beamer for a little while, for almost a month. He learned his lesson, and we shared that car for almost a year. And then when school was starting, it was seriously like 2 weeks before school started. I was like, oh, wait, I need to get a car for the boys, because my oldest is now 17, and then a 15-year-old that will be getting his driver's permit soon. And I start looking at cars, and honestly, the scarcity was there. I was like, just give them a dumpy car. They're young kids. They're not going to take care of it. And I caught it. You want to know how I caught it? I actually found a salvaged car that looked great, and it was a crazy good price. And I took it to my mechanic, and he showed me where the frame had cracked, and they had repaired the weld. They had welded it. And he actually Googled the VIN, and we pulled up the accident that it had been. Liam, this car was a disaster. It like went straight into a pole, and the whole front end was smashed in. He said, Katie, if you buy this car, you're going to be spending like $10,000 a year just to like upkeep on it. And plus the frame was cracked. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have scarcity thinking again. Like, this is so stupid. And I went to the Subaru dealership, and I got my kids a really nice car. And I said, look, and that story in itself is really incredible. Actually, I think I need to kind of share that too, because I didn't want them to just have a nice car handed to them. Nobody values that, right? And I ran the risk of my teenage boys being like, Mom got me a safe car. Cool. Yeah, now I'm going to be the cool kid at school. I knew they wanted like a 2-door blue sports car. I knew that's what they wanted, but that's not what I was going to get them. So I buy this Subaru Outback. They have no idea that I've just bought it for them. They didn't even know I was looking for a car. I think my son thought he was taking the Beamer to school. We come home. They don't know we have it. And my husband calls them upstairs. It was like, we leave every Thursday night because it's date night. So it was just kind of standard. We get home from date night. We call them upstairs. We have the 17-year-old and 15-year-old sit on the couch. And we look at them. We said, hey, super exciting. School's starting. And you're going to need to get to school. And Mom doesn't want her Beamer sitting in the school parking lot, and Dad doesn't want his truck in the school parking lot. So you guys are going to need to walk. And they were like, what? Are you kidding me? And they start looking at each other, and they're like, are Mom and Dad serious? And they don't say anything. And I start jumping in. I'm like, yeah, I mean, we live like not even a mile from the school. It's not a big deal. And keep in mind, Liam, we live in the Pacific Northwest. It's raining like a lot of the year. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. And you guys will be able to get there easily. And I'm like leaning into it. And that's when they start to pipe up and they're like, we have to walk. And I said, well, I mean, I could drop you off. And my 17-year-old's like, no, mom, you're not dropping us off at school. And then I kept going with this, Liam. It gets even better because they're football players. And I said, look, I know that you've got football gear that you need to get to school sometime. And so I'm going to go to Costco. I'm going to get you one of those carts and you can just pull your gear in the wagon as you're walking to school. And at that point, my 17-year-old drops his head and he's staring at the floor. He can't even look me in the eyes anymore. And I said, his name's Walker. I said, Walker, seems like this is making you upset. What's going on? And he was like, Mom, it's my senior year. Are you serious? Like, you want me to walk to school and pull a wagon? I said, it's not a big deal. And he's just like, well, can we just at least get me a pair of wheels, like a $2,500 car? Can we just get a $2,500 car? And I said, $2,500. And keep in mind, he has a job, but he makes like $200 a month. And I said, do you have that kind of money? And he said, no, I was hoping you would buy it. I said, $2,500, like that's a lot of money. And then my husband even pushes back on him. He said, could you find a car for like $1,400? And he's dying. And they're looking at each other and they just can't even believe it. Now, why am I doing that with my kids? This is very intentional. And you'll see why as I finish the story. I knew they needed to value it and to take ownership over it. And so this was very intentional. We were not pulling a trick on them. It was helping them have the right frame of mind for taking care of a car. And so, we're going back and forth. We're talking about, should we get a $2,500 car, $1,400 car? It might not look very pretty at that price point. Are you willing to take care of it? Will you be too cool to drive it? And he kept saying, he's like, no, I'll take care of it. I won't be too cool. I'll even pay for the gas. And I said, you'll pay for gas? Yeah, I'll pay for gas. And I was like, okay, he wants it. He values it. He's ready. So my husband says, hey, you guys need to come outside. And he makes up some excuse like they haven't been taking care of all of the weights in the gym in our garage, and makes them come outside. And it was nighttime and we had parked the Subaru with the Sequoia. We have a Sequoia and we shined the lights of the Sequoia onto the Subaru. They come outside and we caught this on camera, by the way. They come outside and they're like, what? And they just didn't even know what was going on. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, was that a joke? Wait, is this for us? And they were ecstatic and so appreciative, so excited. And now, instead of pulling a wagon with their football gear to school, they're driving a Subaru. So that I share that story because it's important to not just understand what to do with your money, but understand the frame in which you need to view your money. And that was the lesson that I learned I think in a very painful way in my first business. And I'm not making that mistake anymore, Liam. Like, this is a girl who has a digital wallet. We invest in crypto. I use Michael Michalowicz's system of profit first. And I'm not last to get paid anymore. And I'm really thoughtful with my money. And I think for a long time, I thought money was evil and bad, like bad people make money. And I've learned that money's not good or bad. It's a magnifier, and it can magnify our intention. And when you have a pure and true and good intention, and you have good taste and you want to go buy a Beamer, go buy a Beamer. And if you have a 17-year-old, go get a Subaru Outback. They're like the safest car. They're super cool.
They are cool. That's what my wife drives for a lot of those same reasons.
Yeah.
So we've got young kids, right? Ours are 1.5 and almost 3. So one of the things that I have back of mind and would love your perspective, right? As you shared this story with your kids, my upbringing was very similar to what you were talking about, Katie, right? Where very frugal, right? Make sure my parents invested a lot to make sure we could have private education and
Yeah.
set us up well for success. Um, so I had good fortune. They paid for me to go to Yale, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, while at Yale, there was, and as I look back, right, two very different mindsets. Those who came from money and were very privileged, right, in terms of they have all the conveniences, they expect the conveniences, and their attitude and lifestyle goes along with that, right? And then you have the other people who are kind of appreciative, right? And so now as I've looked forward and we're in a place where our family doesn't necessarily have to worry about money anymore. And there are certain conveniences and, a life of abundance that my wife and I want to live.
Yeah.
While at the same time, how do you shelter your kids, right? To know like, hey, this isn't normal, right? And have that appreciation for like, hey, I bootstrapped the heck out of this business to get here, right? Like I got sick of rice and beans for 3 years, but I
Yeah.
did it, right?
Yeah.
And to not lose sight of that other side, right? And so I think that's something that's always back of mind for me is how do you instill that appreciation
Yeah.
while also not forsaking some of the things
Yes.
that you articulated, right?
Yeah.
That nice car, the nice vacation, right? The upgrades to first class, whatever they may be.
hmm This is a really good question. And big picture, I kind of want to share the principle, which is oftentimes we think in binaries in our mind. It's yes, no, good, bad, right, wrong, black, white. And there's always a third option, actually. And option three includes infinite possibility. And the road to option three is a road that we create. So I was kind of stuck in those binaries, I think for a long time, even as a parent. And it was either make my kids struggle and suffer and then they'll appreciate, or spend too much money on them and they'll be spoiled brats, right? It was just one or the other. And for a long time, I kind of believed those things. And I think that's why I thought it was so virtuous to not pay myself very much in the beginning, right? And what I have since learned is there, it's not one or the other, it's an and. And the way you incorporate the and is, I think the story of me sharing my BMW with my son is an example. Like I've created abundance and I want to share it with you. And if you want access to it, there are things that you need to live up to, standards and commitments that you need to make in order to have access to it. So how do we then do this in our parenting? There's not really like a rule book for this, Liam. I'll give you another story. Um, for one of my son's birthdays, I gave him. I honestly, I just didn't have time to go shopping. I didn't know what to get him. He was a teenager now. I gave him $200, and I was like, "Here, you can have $200, whatever you want with it." And we were shopping, and he picked out that it was like a couple weeks later. We were out shopping. He picks out this hideous, hideous pair of shoes. There were some special edition Nikes. They were old man shoes, Liam. They were horrible. And it was the only thing in the store that he wanted. And we get to the counter, and I hadn't looked at the price. I was like, sure, it's your money, whatever you want. And the woman scans them. It was like $160 for these shoes. And it triggered me big time. $160, that was like my month-long grocery like budget. And it totally triggered me. And I immediately said to the woman, I said, we're not getting those. And I handed them back to her. And I thought about it later. I was like, did I react too much? Like what was going on? And why is it not okay to get those shoes? And here's why. As she scanned them, I turned to him and I said, do you need these? And he like cocks his head back and he was like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do with the $200. And I was like, oh, wow, we've lost gratitude here. So that's when I was like, okay, I know I told you you could buy anything you wanted with these, but we're not buying these shoes. And we had a conversation afterwards. And I was like, look, right now I'm taking that $200 away from you because you are not even grateful for this. And that's not okay. And so we had a conversation about money and the value of money and earning money. And because he was not valuing it, he was not being grateful, and he needed some course correction. So in that moment, I had to share some stories with him and kind of give him perspective. I was like, okay, a little too much abundance in this boy's life. He needs a little course correction here. And to go along with that, like one of the things that we do in our home is my husband grew up in a home where they had this gorgeous acre and a half, and he and his brothers were required to spend pretty much their whole Saturday working in that yard. And there was no like cash compensation. Yes, they had a wonderful home and loving parents, but there was no cash compensation. And we made a decision that we actually want our kids to understand money and earning money and valuing money. And so we pay them to mow the lawn. And I think it's an important lesson for them to learn, and like hand them the cash and say, hey, great job. Thanks for doing your job. Because again, like I think that lack of being compensated as a young child for my husband played into compensating himself once his business was making millions of dollars. Like there was kind of this story that had been written in his mind that you didn't earn it. Yeah. So
Interesting.
to go back to answer your question, like I think oftentimes the best solution is option 3, and it takes this combination of either polarity and weaving them together in a new way that creates the result or the child that you see the potential of them being.
Interesting. It's something that's been on my mind, right? And very
a lot of entrepreneurs are experiencing that.
To just I don't want them to be little snooty kids, right? I want them to be appreciative, loving, helping, right? And it's interesting because my frame of reference is only what I grew up with, right? And so that's the default, to your point, right? When you're talking about having to catch yourself and the scarcity, and it's like, I know this works, so I will do this, right? And it's like, okay, there's got to be another way, right? And so what does that other way look like? So it's great to hear your perspective there.
And even asking that question right there, that curiosity that you had, what is that other way? That's the starting point for it right there. Just being curious about it. And your mind will start to hand you potential solutions. Yeah.
That's awesome. I look forward to those solutions being handed to me.
Yeah. They'll come. They'll come.
As our time is wrapping up here, but you had mentioned the philosophy that you prescribe to of profit first. Can you share a little bit about those core tenets for the audience?
So it's actually quite simple. And I think this is why I love it. I love simplicity. I don't like things that are complicated. I don't think there's a reason to make things complicated. And yeah, the book is called Profit First. The author is Mike Michalowicz. And like me, like you, he was an entrepreneur who made a bunch of money and then made a bunch of stupid decisions. And he tells this story about being in the car dealership, and he walked in to, I think it was a Range Rover dealership, and he says, what's the most expensive car you have here? And his wife starts to freak out, and she says, can we afford this car? And he looks at her and he says, we have more money than God. And he just thought he just was set for the rest of his life. And I think it was within 18 months, it was all gone, Liam. And the thing that he noticed was that the way that he was gauging whether or not he could spend money is he would look in his bank account. And everybody does this, right? You look in your bank account, you're like, can I afford this? Yeah. I mean, look at all that money right there. But that's a limited view. And he said, rather than fight against that kind of habit and pattern of looking in your bank account, he said, why not play into that? And so his system is setting up 5 different bank accounts, and your income kind of, you determine percentages per bank account, but you're paying yourself, you're setting money aside for taxes, you're paying your business, and you're determining what goes in those 5 accounts. And that way you can kind of do your default, which is look in the bank account and say, can I afford this? That's essentially, I mean, that's a very oversimplistic view of it, but that's how it works. And for me, one of the things that I love about this is you make a decision ahead of time that I'm going to pay myself X percentage of the business's income. I'm going to pay the business X percentage. You make those decisions, the money funnels through, and you don't have to make decisions anymore. At some point, you might want to change some of those percentages and shift some things around. But for me, a lot of what I need to do in my day is conserve my energy Energy is a really important resource, and we've got to conserve our energy. And money is honestly something that like it can drain me. And so if I can make decisions ahead of time and set it and forget it, as they said in the what are those infomercials? Seriously, if you can set it and forget it with your finances, with your investments, and really not have to check in too much, but you're like, one of the things that I've automated is even my tithing. Can I tell you? I love that my tithing is automated. Yeah, it's fantastic. So that's the profit first system, is making those decisions, setting it up, and then can I afford that? Well, yeah, see, I've got a travel fund right here and the money's there.
What are the big buckets for you in terms of, right? So it sounds like the methodology is all around siphon cash to the buckets that you value, right?
Yeah.
And that you want, right? What
Yeah.
are those buckets for you?
So I pay myself, and that's separate than money that goes to my family. And that one was
the Katie can buy whatever hideous shoe she wants fund.
yes. Only I have very good taste.
Yeah, probably not that way. Probably the exact opposite, but yes.
So there's the Katie fund. There is the business fund, like the business needs money to grow. There is the money fund. I'm sorry, the family fund, which is, groceries and bills and all that kind of stuff for the kids. There is investments. And like I said earlier in the conversation, me and my husband are heavily invested in, for a long time, it was gold and silver and commodities. And crypto was on our radar for a while. But we started investing in crypto, I would say like 2 years ago, more heavily, which is funny because my brother actually has a Bitcoin documentary from like 10 years ago, if you can believe it. Life on Bitcoin. He and his wife got married and they lived on Bitcoin. And it was like the most expensive movie ever made, because they literally spent like $40,000 of Bitcoin from 10 years ago. It's kind of crazy. That's kind of a little bit of an aside.
When you actualize it to today's dollars, that's hilarious.
I know. It drives him crazy. But those are our main buckets. I'm trying to think if there's other ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sounds like you also have tithe, you've got travel, you've got
yes, for sure.
Oh. And then how did you come up with what the allocations were for each of those buckets?
Trial and error, honestly. And Mike gives you some like good suggested starting points, and trial and error. And yeah, like if I want to bump up my own personal pay, I look at I keep looking at my whiteboard, because I have like my year-long plan. Me and my team just created the blueprint for the next year, and we're stepping up our income. For a long time, all I've done is one-on-one coaching. Like the only way you can get my help is to pay me, make a big investment in yourself. And I'm getting ready to share a lot of my coaching and training through programs. But like, as the income of the business grows, so does Katie's personal shoe fund. It grows too. Yeah. So you can just, it's kind of trial and error, and looking at what works. I mean, obviously the tax bank account, like that one's not trial and error, or you're in trouble.
You should know that number.
Yeah. But it's about making decisions, and then taking action on those decisions, and then assessing and saying, am I happy with that? Like, was there enough money for our last trip to Hawaii? Yes or no? Yeah.
As we wrap up, is there, on the topic of investing, right, one word of advice or word of caution that you would give the audience from your experience?
Definitely, when you're investing, check yourself that it's not an emotional investment. I'm assuming you're asking like actual investing your money to grow type investing, correct?
Could be, yes. Or investing in yourself or the company, right? Like there's a lot of different ways, right? You articulated your clients have to make the investment in themselves, right? So investment comes in lots of shapes and sizes.
It does.
Right. But right, as you were looking back, we've talked about scarcity versus abundance, and what counsel would you give to someone who's trying to figure that out?
I mean, you made that distinction. There's investing in yourself. I always invest in myself, including I always work with a coach. I feel like as a coach myself, it would be hypocrisy for me to not work with a coach. I love it. I look forward to those calls. So making sure that you're investing in yourself. When you are investing money, checking yourself that this is not an emotional investment and that you're not needy and desperate of it, is the second thing that I would say. And third, as a man who is married and has kids, make it a family affair. For a long time, I really insisted that my husband do it, and I didn't want to have to look at it. I didn't want to see it. And in my limited thinking, that was too scary, and I didn't want to be involved in it. And even though, interestingly enough, we talked about it all the time, I wasn't taking ownership in that part of my finances. I wasn't. And when I caught it, I recognized this is a principle that I teach my clients. Like, if you want to make a change, you need that change to become a part of your identity. And so I started calling myself Crypto Katie, and I got a digital wallet, and I was like, this needs to become a part of my identity, because I want it to be a part of my life and my actions. So even though I was talking a ton about investing with my husband, I just wasn't taking ownership for it. And I wanted to. So if investing your money is something that you want to be excited and interested in, then bring it into your identity, and including things like look at your Twitter feed, and like maybe you need to start following more crypto accounts or more gold or silver accounts, whatever you're interested in investing in. Like, make it a part of your identity, make it a part of what you're consuming, not in a negative way, but like make it a part of what you're consuming, and invest in yourself.
Very cool. What's the best way for our listeners to get connected back with you?
So I actually have a podcast of my own. It's called What's Working Now. And I'm somebody who believes strongly in principles. And I feel like true principles are always true. And it's the environment, the market, the time, the day that changes. And so what we talk about on that show is how to take true principles and apply them to your business right now today, so that you continue to grow. And ultimately what my clients are interested in is really experiencing the potential that is within them. And that's how I view business. I think I shared that story in the beginning, right? Like, I wanted personal growth. And I have learned that business is a powerful vehicle for me to become who God created me to be. And that's kind of the frame by which I view coaching. And it's also the frame by which I interview people for my show, What's Working Now. So you can find me there. I'm active on Instagram, katie.live. Send me a DM. That's how you can find me.
Very cool. Well, appreciate you spending the time today, Katie.
Yeah. Thanks, Liam. This was awesome. This was actually a different kind of conversation than I think I've ever had. It was exciting.
Awesome. I like that.